It's another episode of the Next Fix podcast where we dive into what everybody wants, and that's the comeback story. And today we've got a rock bottom alumni here, David Nassief. And so, David, how are you living today, brother? You seem cheerful.
I'm very happy. I feel I'm in a really good place in my life, and I'm thrilled about it. I really am.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, the whole point of the show is it wasn't always like that, right, brother?
No, oh, believe me.
So, yeah, I want you to let everybody
Okay,
know, when did the train come off of the tracks? And what did those moments of despair look like for you? And tell us kind of how that went down.
sure. I'd be glad to. Well, actually, I was 63 years old, and I just got fired after 18 years with the same company. I would not wish that day on my worst enemy. I tell you, I did the math, and if we drained all of our savings and all of our retirement, we would be broke by 65. When most people are sitting back and relaxing, we'd be the other extreme. And
Well,
I'm thinking,
let me
oh,
ask you this, David. I mean, you're 63. It's the bottom of the ninth. Were you thinking like, hey, I'm gonna just, 65 and then I'm ready to kick my heels up? Or like how were
no.
you? Were you preparing for retirement?
That's the problem, Ryan, and that's the whole point of what I talk about in my book is 40 years, I was going in circles. I made good money. One thing I know how to do is make decent money, okay? But the problem is there's a difference between making money and building wealth. And although I was very good at making money, I was very, very bad at building wealth. And I just really was chasing this and that shiny object and this new tip and this hot thing. And when the market was up, when the market was down, I'd sell, which is the worst time to do it. When the market was up, I'd buy. It's just like I did everything opposite. At the end of every year, I was like, I either had the same or less than I started with. And it's just like, and that's pretty embarrassing to admit. After 40 years of a good paying life, and you got nothing. It's just like, but here's the worst part of it. Driving home that day, my wife, Mary, we'd been married for 30 years. And she did not deserve the mess I just threw our life into. And I'm thinking, I just felt like such a loser, I'll be honest with you. And
Yeah.
after a couple months of dead end job searching, because my heart wasn't in it, I just didn't want to go back in the corporate world. But I'm thinking, I have a wife to support, I have families where I just can't sit back. I don't have that luxury. And so I just decided to take a huge risk. And what I did is I
Let
went
me
to,
let me ask you again
please,
real quick,
please,
David, and
no,
forgive me because that's what I
no,
do.
no, please do. I want to talk whatever you want.
What industry is this in? Were you like
Sure.
a high level executive?
Yeah.
Because like in the software world, people get laid off like every other minute.
Yeah, yeah, no. I was working for a Fortune 500 company. It was in the automotive industry, and it wasn't like the kind of job where you just get laid off easy. It's just like you put your time in. But I'm not blaming the company at all because
Sure.
they gave me a gift. I didn't know it at the time. I thought it was a curse, and then it turned out to be a gift. But it was just life. It just happens. And but I was not expecting that. No, it was not expected.
I talk about this a lot because when we hit rock bottom or when a door slams shut in our face, it's nearly impossible to see that there's another door cracked open down the hall, right? Like God has opened another door because all you feel and see is that door right up against your nose.
Yeah.
And so it's like, walk me through how they delivered that because you seem like you've got some specificity around some of that message that they delivered to you, right?
It's funny. I felt a little numb the whole time I was being delivered the message. And it's kind of fuzzy about, the specifics on how I was fired. After I was fired and it kind of sunk in, I was already gone out of the meeting, everything like that. That got clear. But at the time, it was probably the standard thing. We decided to go in a different direction. We appreciate all your time, but we're going to, move on and we wish you the best type of thing. And I had a really good situation. I had new company car. I had excellent benefits, excellent salary. I mean, this wasn't just like a regular job I got. And like I said, I was good at making good money. But at 63, here's the problem when I started looking for another job. They're looking at me like people, they didn't say this to me, but it's like, we could hire somebody half your age for a third of the money. Why would we look at you? Why would we even consider that? Why are we even talking? They didn't say that, but I could just, you said, and I think they could sense in me, my heart wasn't in it. I really didn't want to go back to the corporate world. And I don't think I could really hide that very well. I don't think I was good at hiding that. I just,
What
not.
that's such an aware thing to say, right? That you knew, like, you were sending a message with your body language and everything else that, like, you're not into it, and they're probably thinking, like, yeah, to your point, like, we could hire somebody much younger.
Yeah,
So, yeah, man, that's just I didn't think, like I wasn't putting that together that, yeah, the age thing is
yeah.
relevant, right?
Oh, very.
So you start giving it another crack and trying to get some I'm imagining similar positions, right? You're just,
Yeah,
like, gonna think
yeah.
right,
But I knew in my heart no one was gonna hire me. I just knew I was at too high of a salary, and they just didn't need someone my, you know, age and my I almost felt like well, I remember one person say, "Well, tell me, how would you" I forget how they phrased it, but "How would you bring innovation into our program?" And it almost felt like she's saying, "How can somebody 63 bring innovation to our program?" So anyways, it was crazy.
yeah, man, and so you know, how dark did those times go while you were, like while just finding another job and you're realizing it's not working out? How did Mary feel about it? What was it
Well,
looking
it's funny, when I told her she is so supportive. I mean, she is the most supportive wife you could ever ask for. I'm just so grateful. That's my greatest blessing in life is her. Anyways, when I told her, she was so encouraging. But Ryan, I know her very well. 30 years we were married at the time. I could see in her eyes there was some fear, but she didn't want to let me know that. She just wanted to be supportive. And that's why I love her so much because I know she was afraid, but she just, honey, you can do this. Whatever you want to do, you put your mind to it, you can do it. And she may have believed that, but at that moment, I didn't believe that. That's something I
right.
believe.
Yeah, man, alright, so you're on your back,
Yeah.
hardcore, right? Uh, man, you know, hope is so important to all of this, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what you just hit on, with not yourself only, but also Mary, is that the belief you didn't believe you were gonna get another job. She didn't she's scared, she's
Yeah.
afraid. So what how did you turn that around? What was the pivot?
Well, two things. One, I remember waking, and when I hit the pillow, I'm usually asleep, and I'm not going to wake up again until, but I remember waking up in the middle of the night thinking, we've got all of our same expenses going out. Nothing has changed, but I have zero money coming in. This is not right. This is not good. This is not healthy. And then I remember one day she asked me to go to the store with her because she was trying to conserve money. And she says, there's a big sale. And if you could help me, honey, we could get it. So I went. So I went to this discount store place. Okay. And I'm looking around, and I'm sure this is not what it was, but I look like all women with their babies crying in their carts. I was the only man I felt like in the whole store. I felt like I had a big sign on me, biggest loser. I felt like self, this is a Wednesday late morning. I should be at work making money for my family, supporting my family. And here I am. And Ryan, I was at the end of the checkout counter when she checked out. I remember the helpless feeling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break loose. But there was nothing to break loose to. I mean, what could I do? I was stuck there. And I remember feeling just so hopeless. And I says, this is not right. I am not going to do this. That's when I set on a path to start my own business. But let me tell you, I had scars. This just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, yeah,
In my 40s, I had tried two companies. One of them plunged me into deep six-figure debt. It was a total failure. And the other one was a short failure. So it's like, so when I went to the corporate world, then that was kind of an escape. Okay, I can't do it. Not everyone can be the self-employed or start their own business. And I guess I'm not one of those people. But I had no other option. But here's the one thing I knew about me, Ryan. I learned lessons from those failures and those companies. And I says, I'm a stronger person because of those lessons. And I'm not going to make those mistakes that I made in my 40s again. And that is an advantage I have. And so I did have a flicker of hope and belief in me that I think I could turn this thing around. And so when I started, if you want, I can tell you this part now. When I started, I was it's a sales agency, constant rejection, rookie mistakes, prospecting and getting nowhere. But even though I kept getting no's and kept getting resistance, I believe that rejection gave me the resistance I needed to build mental muscles because I kept plugging away. The beautiful part about this, Ryan, is I had no plan B. Because what was the plan B? There's no plan B. I mean, maybe I'd be a greeter at Walmart, but that's about the plan. There's no plan. I had zero plan B. So the
yeah.
point is this: I just kept pushing. I kept grinding. I kept forcing myself to make this work. And in 10 months, I hit an incredible milestone. I was suddenly making more money than my good paying corporate salary. And for a brief second, and this is just a second, Brian, I felt like we made it. But then reality surfaced. I go, wait a minute. I still haven't learned how to invest. I still haven't learned how to save. We have saved nothing. I said, this is the that. So I did a deep dive. I says, I
Well,
didn't
let
have
me
time.
let me
Oh,
let me pump
okay.
the brakes on you real quick,
Oh,
David, because
please,
this is
please.
really itching at me. And I, to your story about how you felt in that store, right? In that grocery store. When my experience is that when people are in a state of hopelessness and despair, rock bottom, it's nearly impossible to realize there's other people that are suffering, or you just feel alone, right? You
Yeah.
feel like
Oh,
you're
yeah.
the only. You said to me, I was the only guy in that store. And that's the feeling that a lot of people in recovery will feel. Like you just can't help it but feel like you're the center of the universe and you're the worst one in it. Right? You're the center of the universe and you're the worst one in it. Now, clearly you're not the only guy in that store, but that
Yeah.
feeling of being alone and you're
Yeah.
the only is so detrimental. It's so hard. It's such a hurdle. It's such a hurdle to get over that you're the worst one.
Yeah.
Right. And then another element of your story that I wanted to kind of make some connections here is that what a glorious blessing it is for you to recognize that your failures and where you were at your lowest with the six figures in debt and the two, what most people would consider failures, or at least what you're considering a failure. That's what you're building this like tenacity, right? Because then you're also mentioning all of the no's that you're able to withstand and then grow stronger for it. And
Yeah.
I believe this wholeheartedly, right? An addict has a tenacity that is unmatched. And so when an addict has that tenacity that you have now because you have no plan, that's what you need. An addict only has one plan, and it's to get the drugs or alcohol. And they will not stop. And they always succeed. Right. So if you could take that tenacity and you could apply it to your own business, I mean, this is what I talk about all the time. So there's another element of your story that I don't wanna skip over because you mentioned you started a business and within 10 months, you were achieving what you were or the level of income that you had from your previous job that you just got canned from. Is that correct?
That's very correct. I still hardly believe it myself.
10 months? I mean, okay, and so to your point, yes, you don't like you now you have the money again, but you're still inept as far as keeping it, right?
Just to be clear, but on the 10th month, my income that month was equivalent to my monthly income at my corporate job. That's what I'm saying. Okay, I'm not saying that I made a whole year's income in 1 month or something like that. I'm just saying, but then it kept growing from there. It didn't go back. It kept growing. Yeah.
So 10 months in, to your point, right? You've got kind of like a breath of fresh air. You can kind of like catch your breath, if you will, right? You're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm making the money again. And as you had said before, you're really good at making money. So you did it again, but you did it with your own business, right? Now the real nuts and bolts about what you've created, right? With what you'll tell us about is like how to keep it, right? How
Yeah.
to generate more of it, right?
And, gr-
So
and grow it. Yeah. And grow it. Yeah.
sure. All right. So yeah, I want to know
But
about this.
can I say one more thing about the failure thing? Because you mentioned something that I
Yeah.
think is so true. When I got that six-figure debt, when looking back, it wasn't a failure. It was an education. People pay that for college, and I felt like that was my education, my graduate degree, I guess you call it, to make this happen. Because if I hadn't had that failure, I'm not sure I would have succeeded at 63. I needed that 44-year-old's experience of failure, what I thought was failure, that education, that information, so I didn't redo it at 63. Looking back, that was very I wouldn't erase that. I wouldn't erase it. I needed those failures. I really needed those failures for this current,
Yeah.
endeavor, so.
Do you believe in fate? Do you believe that all of those were intentional in your path and your journey?
Well, the one thing I had through the whole time was my faith. I feel very strongly in my faith, and I knew the Lord was hand was there. And I just, have you ever heard the saying, "Pray like everything depends on God, then get up and work like everything depends on you"? For 10 months, all I was doing is praying and working, praying and working, praying and working. That's all I could do I felt the Spirit guide me. I just that helped. That really helped a lot. If I hadn't had my faith and those failures, I think I would be Another
Yeah.
statistic, another statistic, living in my car. I'm not kidding. I mean, that's how
Wow.
I was getting to be. Anyways.
Yeah. And so you start the business, and so now you've generated some income, and now did you foresee that this was another point to pivot and make things different so you don't, so it doesn't come crumbling down again?
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, I just so you know, not to jump ahead, but this one page compass I'm talking about for building wealth,
Of course, yeah.
I had another one page compass for my business. And when I learned things and I got ideas and stuff like that, I would put them on my one page. And every week I would review it for like 2 minutes. This is separate from my finances. So I could stay on track because I couldn't get off track with this was the engine giving me the income. If I didn't have this, then I'm not going to build any wealth if it was with no job and no income and that kind of thing. So both were really balanced there. But when you keep it simple on one piece of paper, both directions, it does work quite well. And today I still have the one page compass for my wealth and for my business. And I have a very successful business now. My son's joined me and it's flourishing. Last year was the best year we've ever had. So I mean it's going well, but that that focus, that direction, this that simplicity gives you, I think is critical. I really do.
Yeah. So now, clearly you've gotten back onto your feet, right? You hit rock bottom. Mary doesn't know what to do. She's lying and saying she's not afraid. Bless her heart, right? And I know that feeling when my wife's like, "No, I know you can do it." And I'm like, it's like 40% of you believes it that knows
Right.
that I can do it. So all right. So how did you create, for instance, the one-page approach? Like where, you've learned a lot from your mistakes, but how did you really start, organizing it and maintaining, to your point, like this super simple approach? Like where did it all
Uh,
come from?
well, let me just tell you the very brief story that inspired the whole compass thing, okay?
Okay.
Scientists at the Max Planck Institute did a study. They placed people in the center of a dense German forest and they told them to walk in a straight line to the edge of the forest. Now, these were confident and capable people, but here's what happened. When the clouds covered the sun, the GPS tracking showed they were gradually starting to walk in a circular motion. Some of them were ending up right back where they began. And yet, each and every one of them was absolutely convinced they were walking in a perfectly straight line. Ryan, that is me for 40 years. For 40 years, I was working hard, making what I thought was the right decisions, but ultimately just ending up right back where I started and going nowhere. That's when I said, okay, I can't do this again. That story happened about I heard that story about the time I said, okay, I need a compass, but it's not going to be the traditional compass. It's going to be on one piece of paper and it's going to be simple and it's going to be direct. If you like, I could just tell you what happened before it was even finished. It saved me a ton of money. What happened is I was 40, and I'm 64 now, 64 now. So desperate. I mean, okay, we were making money, but I still hadn't had the wealth building figured out anything. So I started this compass, and before I was even finished, here's what happened. I was a fiduciary advisor who I was referred to, recommended something she said was as a LERP. She said it was amazing. Life insurance, long-term care, tax-free income, the whole package. And when she said that some members of Congress invested in it, I thought, oh, this is pretty good. It must be decent. Then she said something interesting. She says, David, if you invest in this with me, I will waive my quarterly fees. Now, one of the things in my one page wealth compass, which wasn't finished yet, but I had this, it said, follow the money. And it tells me to understand how people are getting paid that are giving me advice, especially when it has to do with money. And so I went home and did some research and I found out these products pay salesmen and advisors amazing commissions. They have sky high fees for clients and very poor returns. Ryan, this is the exact opposite of what I told her I needed. I had a very short runway. I needed steady, stable growth. And so what that exposed to me was she was about to make a fortune and I was about to be going back and walking in financial circles. So I says, no more of this. I dug deeper in my compass and I did something that it helped me do a few things. One, it helped me to get in the right kind of investments. And I'll briefly explain it to you if you like. Also, it helped me to avoid getting ripped off, even by people who are professional with initials after their name and seem really credible with nice offices. Okay. And it gave me the keys to accelerate my path to real financial freedom. It protected my money so it could build wealth for me and not for somebody else. There are so many conflicts of interest out there, Ryan, that people are just innocently falling into these traps that even the people setting the traps may not be totally aware of the trap they're setting. That's crazy.
Right. No, well, I agree with you wholeheartedly because there's so many elements of our society and our culture and our life, and, like, one of the big ones for me recently is, like, the doctors. and it's a question that I have just like yours. Like, wait a second, these people are making money by sending me over to another specialist and they send and if they had it their way, they just you go to a doctor once a week and they pass you
Yeah.
around and everybody gets a little bit of the pie. And that's a negative comment. So forgive me for that. But I want to go back a little bit to the element of a one page, right? When I hear one page, I think about like somebody like an actor, right? Their one page kind of professional summary, right? Or I think of like a resume. But how did that tool become your tool? And like, how did you know to, okay, well, I'm going to put everything into a single page, right? For the sake of simplicity. Like, how did that develop? I mean, how did you
Okay.
gather that kind
Sure.
of wisdom?
Well, I don't know if I mentioned this, but in that process, especially in the very first part of that 6-year journey, I read 21 books on personal finance. I listened to 13 financial podcasts faithfully. I also read countless blogs and articles. I didn't just feel like let's do what feels right. I says I can't make mistakes anymore in this area. I got dug deep and I started finding things out that people. Can I just show you real quick? Maybe
Yeah.
give a good example. This is the actual compass, and I'm going to give it all to your listeners for free. But here's one of the things. What a lot of the gurus tell you is when you get out of debt, which is one of the steps. Okay, when you get out of debt, then you want to build a emergency fund of 3 to 6 months. Now, I don't disagree with that. But here's what most of them all say. First, get safety and build an emergency fund in 3 to 6 months, then start your investing process. Okay, well, they just got out of debt. And so I did the math, and here's what I found out when you do that. You're going to delay your investing about a year, maybe a year and a half, because getting 3 to 6 months of your expenses, that's gonna take some time. Just that delay in the process, if you follow that from 25 to 65, that's a $500,000 you're out of because it didn't get that compounding. What I found out a much better approach is do the wealth building and the emergency fund at the same time. You just got out of debt, you've got some cash flow free, and do it at the same time. Just that little tweak is like $500,000 more at the end. And there's several things like that. These are dogmas that some of these gurus say, oh, this is the way to do it. There's no other way. And it's like, wait a minute, let me just see. And when you do the math and really delve into that, and that's why I did this, because I says, I can't even the gurus who are acting like they're really your buddies, and maybe they're good people. They maybe just don't know because they never did the math either. I don't know what their deal is, but that's when I says, I can't rely on anybody. I have to be the CEO of my own personal finance, and I can get advice. And I had lots of virtual mentors. Warren Buffett was one of my great mentors. I never met the guy before in my life, but I read his material, listened to him, that kind of thing. And that's how really so I just distilled everything down to one piece of paper because I says, I can't make this complicated. I can't do a 50-page report here. I need to have it easy. So because
Right.
I had to work on my company. I didn't have time to follow Wall Street and listen to all this stuff. I had to work on my company. And so I needed this to be a set it and forget it approach. And that's exactly what I made it
Ah,
to be.
okay. All right. So the business is doing well, right? But now you're starting to think to yourself, okay, I'm doing well. Now what? Right. I've been here. I am here. Right. Like
Yeah.
so to some degree, when you're at rock bottom, everything is it's a little more simple when you're at rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah. It's a good point.
there's a trick when you start to get out of rock bottom and you do kind of catch your breath and you're like, and this happens in sobriety too. Once you start getting some traction in recovery, and honestly, it is around a year. I know that things really changed around a year. Everybody started kind of taking it more serious, including myself. But then it was like, okay, I'm not scratching and clawing and I'm not in the trenches. I'm not like fighting to stay sober each and every hour. But now that I am like, okay, now what do I do? That was a big question. What do I do with myself? And so to your point, right? Like you're at rock bottom, you're facing financial ruin, your family is worried, but now they're not, right? And you made an important decision. You wanted to double down and make sure it never happens again. And so then this is the from what I could gather is the genesis of your one-page approach. And now you mentioned a couple times that there's more than one compass involved here.
In
You
my
have one for
life.
your
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
and you have one for your wealth, right?
But I also have one for my health too, my physical health too. So I just
Interesting.
feel like in the important areas of your life, I feel like crystal clear clarity. I don't want to, about your doctor statement, I don't want my life to be determined by any doctor. I mean, I want them as advisors. I listen to them, but I'm making the final decision based on information that I've learned. And so I just think I know people who make a lot of money and their health is garbage. I mean, and I know one guy, he was a billionaire and I didn't know him personally, but he died like at 63 or 64 or
Right.
something like that. And because
Sure.
he didn't take care of his health. My gosh, he had all the money, but he didn't have the health thing. Other people who are very spiritual people and they're really, they have a good moral compass, and then all of a sudden, but when they retire, it's misery. It's like they have no money. They didn't have the financial piece. They had the spiritual piece, which is really important. I'm not even questioning that, but why not have the financial piece? What's wrong with having the financial piece too? And I've seen people like that go to their graves in pain. I mean, from the point where you get out, you stop working, which is supposed to be, and no, it's painful. They have to decide between medicine and food or rent or whatever it is, and that's just wrong. It's just wrong, and that's
Yeah.
why key
That's the
areas of
point.
yeah,
That's the point here, right?
yeah,
And I think I believe that that is your message that you're trying to help people with is like, don't do that. Right. And if you make the right moves, and one of them you kind of gave away there is like, you don't have to follow it to some certain degree. Like you don't have to have some safety net first. You could start applying to your wealth while you're in
billings,
motion,
yeah.
right? Getting back up on your feet and all of those types of things. Let me ask you this. Do you feel that every person's one page would be unique? Or do you feel like the answer like what yours is applicable to everybody?
When it comes to finances, I'd say they're pretty think I don't think they need to be unique because math is math and the financial world is the financial world. Now, when it comes to like your spiritual compass, no, that's going to be a personal thing and mine's going to look probably very different than yours. I mean, we'll have some common things, I'm sure, but very different things. Health-wise, I don't know. There's a lot of information out there, Ryan. I'll just give you an example. This is not about money, but it just makes a point here. When I was 55, I went to the doctors and he gave me a blood test. My cholesterol was 235, which is very high. It's dangerously high. He says, David, we got to get you on statins right away. I go, okay, well, wait a minute. Let me do a little research first. He goes, then he gave me this story about his father, how he had high cholesterol. He died. He almost had tears. It was very emotional. I said, okay, I respect what you're saying, but I just have to do my own research. He was not happy with me. Went home, did the research. I found out there's more solutions than just drugs, lifestyle and diet and exercise. So I did a 180-degree turnaround on my health. And I went back in less than, no, 90 days. It wasn't less than, it was full 90 days. Tested me. I went from 235 to 175. Anything under 200 is really good. Okay. I'm
Sure,
175. And he's like,
sure.
and I want to tell him, I was so excited about it. He didn't want to hear it. He goes, yeah, I had to almost shake him to listen to me. No, he didn't want to hear it. He's, if you can't take drugs, that's the only, it's a fad. It's a fad. Okay. I'm 72 now. Guess what my cholesterol is now? 65. It's 10. So what kind of fad is that? It worked. So I'm just saying, when it comes to health, I don't like to give other people control either.
Right. Hey, well, good on you for that. I can really appreciate your dedication to figuring out these things on your own, right? But now for other people, you've found a rather good one page for wealth management, right? Now, is so it kind of like to my question earlier, like, is there a minimum for somebody to, I don't know, like start with? I mean, I haven't read it clearly, but like how does it approach? Is it principles that people can apply with any amount of money that they're making now? Or is it like, oh, this is what you do with X number of dollars?
Well, let me tell you, it's two pieces of it. This is the 9 trail markers that will get you step by step where to go. But these are the 5 guiding principles. And why this is important, Ryan, is because even if you're on the steps and somebody gives you something, a new idea that it's not part of the steps, you go, well, that sounds pretty good. Well, then you go to the principles and say, wait a minute, this is really clearly against this principle. I'm not going to do this. So it's like you got the steps, but then you got the principles as kind of a guardrails so you don't get off
Sure.
track, And I felt both of those were very important. Most financial people, it's just steps, or maybe it's just principles. But I said, no, they need to marry each other. And then what's the beauty of this is, say you're on a certain step and you say, well, I need more help on this debt thing, David. I'm really in deep debt. Then it just says, go to chapter 4 and it will give you a multiple different options based on your personality and your situation on how to get out of debt in the most direct, effective way. And so this is like the 30,000-foot view. And the book which goes, you can get with it. This is like the map. Turn right, turn left at this intersection, turn left. Okay, so 30,000-foot view is not going to tell you that, but it'll keep you on the right direction. This will keep you out of trouble and keep not you out of the ditch, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Okay, all right, so it's kinda like a 1-2 punch, right?
Yeah,
So you've got,
yeah.
like, you've got the one page, right, which is just, like, something to reference often and kinda, like, to your point about the guardrails, right? Stay on the path generally and be pointed in the right direction. And I think throughout with it but you do a very good job of revisiting these ideas often, right? Like, you had
Oh yeah.
mentioned that
Well,
yeah,
that's why I have a 2-minute review every week. It doesn't take any more than 2 minutes to just go over this so I could say, oh, I did that impulse buy yesterday and I broke the rule of for impulses you have to wait 24 hours just to make sure that it's a real thing, it's not just an impulse. And so that keeps me on track because I'm going to make mistakes, everyone's going to make mistakes, but when you're reviewing this every week for 2 minutes, you pull yourself back really quickly before you get too far down the
sure.
road, and now it's a nightmare. And you mentioned to me, Ryan, about do I make enough money? Can I tell you something that I just got to put that lie to bed here about not making enough money? Let me share this with you. NBA players, on average, make over $10 million a year. I didn't say $10 million in a career, Ryan. I said 10 in a single year. Yet, after 5 years of retirement, 60% of them are broke, according to the Netflix documentary Broke. And the NFL is worse. NFL players, after only 2 years of retirement, 78% of them are either bankrupt or in serious financial situation. That's according to Sports Illustrated. Now, Ryan, compare that to Dale Schroeder, a basketball loving carpenter who made modest income his entire life. At the end, for him, his portfolio was $3 million because he learned to live on less than he earned and invest the difference. This carpenter making below average income had more money than most NBA and NFL players who are making the $10 million a year. There's a difference between earning money and building wealth. The NBA players were great at earning money. I used to be great at earning money. I'm still great for 40 years, but terrible at building wealth. And I was terrible at building wealth. The carpenter was not so hot at making money, but he was amazing at building wealth. And so they're two separate skills. And no, there is no minimum income you have to be making. You can start any income that you're at right now. And this whole lie
That's a
about I don't make enough money is a lie.
sure. Yeah, and listen, it's funny that this is kind of the dichotomy that my wife and I have. She's frugal and her culture, she's Filipino. They're very much about not wasting things. They live below their means. I am who you were before. I
Yeah.
I spend my energy to make money. I spend very little energy on making decisions on how not to spend it, right? And I understand it's not ideal. Hopefully, and I pray often that the two of us will can kind of balance each other out in our latter years. Yeah, it is. I think you bring up a good point though, because I think just too often people will believe that their current situation is missing something. And I'm talking rather generally about all types of goals, including their health or including their spirituality or including, wealth management. It's too often and entirely too common that people think, well, it doesn't apply to me because I don't make enough money. Well, it doesn't apply to me because I'll always be fat. Or this doesn't apply to me because, I've just been this way for so long. So there's this myriad of reasons or excuses that the common person will just, it's like a Swiss Army knife of excuses for why not, like why they won't pursue something like wealth management. I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd like to know your opinion. I would say 3 out of 4 people believe that the subject of wealth management doesn't apply to them.
I thought that for 40 years. I thought, hey, I make good money. Obviously, I'm good with money if I make good money. No, that's not true. But you said something, right, that makes me, I want to comment on. You said you're very typical, by the way. Your wife is one way, you're the other way. One tends to be more of a spender and the other one's more of a saver. And that's very common. I think opposites attract, whatever. But the point is, a lot of it is intimidation, like, oh my gosh, get a financial planner or read all these books or whatever. But if you can sit down and say, honey, this is simple. It's on one piece of paper. Let's look at one point and just look at it and just maybe we can get started together on this thing. And when you both can sit down and see a simple path, that's my whole key. So many people are intimidated by, oh, I don't know enough, or I don't have the degrees, or I'm not a Wall Street expert, and whatever the thing is you don't have to be. It's incredibly simple to do it. I just ripped out the reason the financial community makes it seem complicated is so you have to hire them to do the work for you, and they get a big cut of your money. That's totally not true. It's a lie.
Yeah.
It's a lie. So,
Yeah, and I wanna bring this up too because it's very relevant for why I've written a book, and I self-published my book, and I started to realize that there's like an army of middlemen. There's this army of middlemen
there is-
that are on the take
yeah,
and make you believe that you cannot get the job done on your own for whatever reason. But I believe that doesn't just apply to book publishing, it applies to a lot of things, right? Is
oh, yeah, it
so
does.
there's all kinds of people that make careers of being that middle person. And there's a very important point too. In like the 70s to 90s, it was all about permission. You needed permission from a record label to produce music. You needed that permission, and they would kind of put you on, is what is actually still a relevant term. They would put you on, and you would get a record deal. That doesn't apply anymore. You can make music, and you can share it. The technology has changed the landscape, and it's also relevant to publishing. You can write a book, publish it successfully, and get it out to the entire globe. And you don't need a publisher. And so this age that we're in, and what you're talking about specifically, if you had a lot of money and you wanted to even consider being wealthy, you had to go to a bank. You had
Yeah,
to go to a bank and you
yeah,
had to get that person, like that young lady that you were talking about that said she was going to waive her commissions. You
yeah.
had to get somebody like that. And if you wanted to buy stock, you had to have a stockbroker. All of that is out the window. It's
That's
out
right.
the window.
Yep. Yep. And your point about a middleman, can I give a lot of people say, Dave, what is the biggest financial mistake people make? And I just like to share this with your listeners because I think they get something out of it. The biggest financial mistake people make is they're paying tiny termite sized fees that quietly inflict termite like destruction on their portfolios. And let me give you an example. You got two people, same age, say 25, out of college, earning money now, same income level. They both invest $1,000 a month for their full career, 40 years. Okay. Person A puts it in a low cost index fund with a 0.03% management fee. Person B goes to an advisor who charges a full 1%, which is standard, and they put them in an actively managed fund, which has a 5.75 upfront fee and a 0.66 ongoing management fee. Okay. So you do this for their 40 years. Okay. At the end of 40 years, person A has a portfolio of $0.5 million. Person B has a portfolio of $4.2 million. Same contributions, same market returns. The only difference was the fees, creating a $4.3 million difference. And here's the thing, that's assuming they never got a single raise. If we figured in their raises, it'd even be a bigger difference. But here's the saddest tragedy. Person B probably feels like, oh, I got really good service. I really like my guy. We went golfing one day. And he's a really good guy. Little did he realize he did the equivalent of funding someone else's retirement with half of his own money. I
Right.
am, I am not saying I'm against advisors, but what I am against are products that enrich Wall Street at the expense of their clients' portfolios. I'm embarrassed to tell you this, Ryan. I never questioned fees for 40 years. I thought those were the rules of the game. But I later learned when I did this compass that the rules we don't question can cost us the most. In that person's case, it was $4.3 million quietly leaving his account month after month, year after year. And that's what people got to understand. It's not complicated. They try to make it complicated so you don't understand. And that 1% fee, that's no big deal. That's a big deal. 1% fee is a big deal. I'm going to say right now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I love what you're doing, brother, and I love your enthusiasm and your passion for this. I love that you came back from rock bottom. It's all outstanding. Well, I want you to share with everybody, like, what do you have coming? Because I know it's the one page wealth compass, right? There's the book, And then there's also the one page, but kind of explain, how people can get involved in this, like your ecosystem there.
Absolutely. What I like everyone to do is get this for free. I'm not, this is my secret sauce. This is what got me from 63 to not only 69 French free, what I still use today. And my portfolio has doubled 3 times in 6 years. It doubled. The last double was a 7-figure double. This next double will be double the 7-figure double. I mean, that's how this it really gets going. But what is this is free. I'm not selling anything. You go to my site, everything is free. The only thing is there's a link to the book if you want to buy the book on Amazon. It's a very reasonable price. I'm doing this because here's the deal. I was in a unbelievable horrific storm and someone gave me a lifeline and I felt I was inspired with this compass and it saved me. I felt the ultimate in selfishness is to keep it to myself. And so this is a pure passion project. I'm not looking to make any money off it. I'm doing fine with my business. Okay. I don't need this. But anyways, this is what you'll get. If you go to my website called onepagewealthcompass.com, right when you get there, the first thing is put your email in. They'll send you this. You can download it instantly. There's no strings attached, nothing to buy, nothing to do. But you'll also be part of my newsletter. So you'll get free tips on a regular basis from me to help support this. And then if you say, well, David, I like this idea and I want to go in a little deeper, then you can get the book. And because the book will tell you, like if you're on one of these steps or one of these principles and you want some extra help, it tells you what chapter to go in the book. And you go there and you have to read the whole book. You just read that chapter to really refine your deal. And I wrote it in a way that's lots of stories, real life, true stories, not with just me, but people I know and people who succeeded and people who failed, because both are really good education. And that's all I have. I don't have a course to sell you. I'm not trying to get your money for anything like that. I just want to help people to get out of and get onto a path that they want to.
Isn't it beautiful, man? Books are just such a passion project too,
Yeah,
right?
they are. They really are.
Like, books very rarely go above like $25 or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. And I just think that I think it's just the ultimate use of our knowledge. It's the best way to pay it forward, right? To put it into a book and share that message in written form. And then for other people to be able to take that in, it's timeless too, right?
Yeah.
Like you are intentionally putting this out. And the website might go, who knows? But like your books are going to be floating around, and I just think that's such a beautiful thing, man. That you've made a decision to share this with people, and it's not for any other reason than you feel that it's important, and it is important, because, yeah, there's some people that go to the grave in pain.
And they do. They do. And I don't want anybody else being 63 on the edge of a financial cliff like I did. There's no need for that. And you don't have to make a lot of money. You really don't. Yeah, I made decent money, but I wasted it all. I really did. So it's not about.
Well, listen, man, I truly appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks
Uh,
for having me. I've enjoyed it. I really have.
all right. All right, David. Well, man, everybody, I'll put it in print for everybody to come check it out, man. Get your ducks in a row. Don't die in the grave in pain. That's a
Yeah.
bit harsh, David, but, well, hey, man, you've been a blessing. This has been another episode of The Next Fix.
Thank you.